WHMIS 2015, Part 4. Previously, with WHMIS 1988, we used MSDS, or Material Safety Data Sheets. These typically had 9 sections and expired every 3 years. With WHMIS 2015, we are to use SDS, or Safety Data Sheets. These have 16 sections and contain additional information to align with the global harmonized system. While these do not have an expiry date, they are to be reviewed within 90 days of new information becoming available. You will find an SDS binder with information on the hazardous products we use in every company truck, the shop, and the office. These are updated regularly. We will now go through the 16 sections of an SDS and the information contained within them. Section 1, Identification. The product identifier, which is the name of the product, other means of identification, recommended use of the product, restrictions of use, supplier identification, and the emergency phone number. In Section 2, the Hazard Identification section, we have the GHS classification, the GHS label elements, which include precautionary statements and the hazard pictogram or name of the pictogram, and other hazards not covered by the GHS, for example, a dust explosion hazard. Section 3, Composition and Information on Ingredients. There's 2 subsections in here, Substance and Mixture. Under Substance, we have the chemical identity, the common name and synonyms, the CAS number, EC number, etc., and impurities and stabilizing additives. Under the Mixture section, we have the chemical identity and concentration or concentration ranges of all ingredients that are hazardous. Section number 4, First Aid Measures. A description of necessary measures subdivided according to routes of exposure, the most important symptoms and effects, acute and delayed, indication of immediate medical attention and special treatment if necessary. Section 5, Firefighting Measures. The suitable and unsuitable extinguishing media, for example, not using water to put out a fire, but instead using a fire extinguisher. Specific hazards arising from the chemical, like the nature of any hazardous combustion products, and the special protective equipment and precautions for firefighters. In Section 6, the accidental release measures, it's the personal precautions, protective equipment and emergency procedures, environmental precautions, and methods and materials for containment and cleaning up. Section 7, Handling and Storage. The precautions for safe handling and the conditions for safe storage, including any incompatibilities. Section 8, Exposure Controls and Personal Protection. Control parameters, example occupational exposure limit values or biological limit values, the appropriate engineering controls, and individual protection measures such as personal protective equipment. Section 9, Physical and Chemical Properties. The appearance, physical state, color, etc., and odor. Odor threshold, pH, melting point, freezing point, initial boiling point and boiling range, flash point and evaporation rate. Flammability, solid and gas. Upper and lower flammability or explosive limits. Vapor pressure, vapor density, relative density, solubility, partition coefficient, auto-ignition temperature, and decomposition temperature. Section 10, Stability and Reactivity. This includes the reactivity, chemical stability, possibility of hazardous reactions, conditions to avoid, example static discharge, shock, and vibration, incompatible materials, and hazardous decomposition products. Section 11, Toxicological Information. Concise but complete description of the various toxic health effects and the data used to identify those effects, including information on the likely routes of exposure, symptoms related to the physical, chemical, and toxicological characteristics, delayed and immediate effects and chronic effects from short-term and long-term exposure, and numerical measures of toxicity. In Section 12, Ecological Information, we have the ecotoxicity, persistence and degradability, bioaccumulative potential, mobility in soil, and other adverse effects. Section 13, Disposal Considerations. Information on safe handling for disposal and methods of disposal, including any contaminated packaging. Section 14, Transport Information. The UN number, UN proper shipping name, transport hazard class or classes, packing group, environmental hazards, transport in bulk, if applicable, and special precautions. Section 15, Regulatory Information, is the safety, health, and environmental regulations specific to the product, and the final section, Section 16, Other Information, is the date of preparation or the last revision of the SDS, and further information such as the trademark, references, etc. There are exercises to practice working with SDS on pages 30 and 31 of your worksite booklet. Please take this time to complete them. Once completed, please continue on to WHMIS 2015, Part 5.